passion. You have got to have some passion for the arena that you're going to develop and work in. Because otherwise you're going to be competing against people who do have passion for that, and they're going to build better products and services. You can't be a mercenary, you have to be a missionary. Missionaries build better products and services, they always win. The mercenaries are just trying to make money, and paradoxically, the missionaries always end up making more money. You have to pick something that you actually have a genuine passion for. You have to take risk. You have to be willing to take risk. If you aren't going to take risk, if you come up with a business idea, there's no risk there, you're probably, it's probably already being done. Those ideas are already being done. They're being done well by many, many people. So you've got to have something that might not work. And so you have to accept that your business is going to be, in many ways, an experiment, and it might fail. And that's okay. That's what risk is. The good news is, at Amazon, we still take risks all the time, and we encourage it, and we talk about failure. We should be failing. Our failures have to grow with the company. We need big failures if we're going to be moving the needle. We need to have, billion-dollar scale failures, and if we're not swinging hard enough.
Do you usually have a plan B?
I don't have plan Bs. I actually don't like plan Bs. I find plan Bs are, they defocus you from plan A. Plan B should always be make plan A work.
I'm taking this back from Jeff now. Plan B is to make plan A work. That's it. No more plan Bs.
The stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring, I think in large part. So stress doesn't come. People get stress wrong. 20 years ago, I was driving the packages to the post office myself in my 1987 Chevy Blazer, dreaming that one day I might be able to afford a forklift. And the internet, that's 1995. And 21 years later, the internet is this gigantic thing, and there are many, many successful companies, and the entrepreneurial dynamism that you see on the internet is incredible. I went to my boss at the time, and I really liked my job, and I told my boss I was going to go do this thing, start an internet bookstore, and I'd already told my wife, and she's like, great, let's go. And I said to my boss, I was going to do this. He's like, this is a good idea. He says, I think this is a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And that sort of made some logical sense to me, and he convinced me to think about it for a couple of days. So I went away, and I was really trying to get my head around how to think about this. And I think, for me, the right way to make that kind of very personal decision, because those decisions are personal, they're not like data-driven business decisions. They are, what does your heart say? And for me, the best way to think about it was to project myself forward to age 80 and say, look, when I'm 80 years old, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have. I don't want to be 80 years old in a quiet moment of reflection, thinking back over my life and cataloging a bunch of major regrets. And I think that regrets, our biggest regrets, in most cases, you can murder somebody, okay, you'd regret that, but in most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken, and they haunt us. We wonder, what would have happened? I loved that person, and I never told them. And then they married somebody else. I didn't do this. And so that's the frame of mind that I put myself in. And once I did that, once I thought about it that way, it was immediately obvious to me. I knew that when I'm 80, I would never regret trying this thing that I was super excited about and failing. If it failed, fine. I would be very proud of the fact when I'm 80 that I tried.
And I also knew that it would always haunt me if I didn't try. And so that would be a regret. It would be a 100% chance of a regret if I didn't try, and basically a 0% chance of regret if I tried and failed. So I think that's a useful metric for any important life decision.
My view on work-life balance is that I prefer the phrase work-life harmony. To me, balance implies a strict trade-off. If you're happy at work, if you're finding meaning in your work, if you are, it can be hard. They call it work for a reason. It's not going to be fun all the time. That's a pipe dream. None of us enjoys every minute of every day. And to have that kind of idea would just be naive. But there should be fun at work. You should be laughing. There should be moments of joy. And if you're getting energy from work, instead of your work draining your energy, then you're going to come home and you're going to be a better mother, a better father, a better wife, a better husband, all of those things. You're going to want to take out the trash. And so, even before being asked, that's what's going to happen, Larry. She's going to say, who is this guy? And so, you really need to, I think if you're starting to get to the point where you are worried about work-life balance, I would challenge you to think, is just something out of whack? It's probably not the hours. Look, if you're working 120 hours a week, you're also doing something wrong. That's too much. It's not sustainable. Maybe you can do that for a week or two, but that's it. But if you're working, 60 hours a week, that's completely sustainable for most people. And if you're burned out by it, it's not the number of hours. It's that you're doing something wrong. You need to figure out what it is, because you're going to take that home, and then your home life is going to be stressful, and then you're going to bring that back into the office. So it's going to be a negative spiral, and that spiral will also be a positive one as soon as you turn it around.
If I have a new idea that I am in love with and I want to see it pursued, I do have to build support for it, just like anybody would, because you need very smart people to embrace the idea and move it forward. We have a framework at Amazon. It's one of our leadership principles. It's called disagree and commit. And that is extremely useful, because after you've discussed an idea, you do need to make a decision and move forward, and the whole team needs to really commit to that. When I really feel strongly about something and the team disagrees with me, I have a phrase that I like to use, which is helpful, which is, I want you to gamble with me on this. It's very different from phrasing that in a different way, because the truth is, when you're in a position like that where nobody knows what the right answer is, you're not saying, I'm right on this, go do this. You're saying, I want you to gamble with me on this, because I don't know if it's right either. I disagree and commit all the time. And I promise the people when I do it, very clear, I don't agree with this. I think it's probably not going to work, but I will never say I told you so, and I'm going to be on your team. I will do everything I can to make it work. I talk a lot about willingness to be misunderstood. That's a really important thing to have. If you're going to do anything new or different in the world, it is going to be misunderstood, sometimes by well-meaning critics, sometimes by self-interested critics. You'll get all kinds. And it's okay. It's all part of the process. The only way to avoid criticism altogether is to be completely conventional in everything you do. And so how do you respond to the criticism? What do? What's the right thing to do? Well, I think the first thing you do is you ask, are the critics right? You listen, you ask, are they right? Or even if they're not completely right, is there some piece of it that's right, that you can be inspired by? And then if you decide, by the way, that the answer is no, that you believe, you have conviction that what you're doing is the right course, then no force in the world should be able to move you. You should have a deep keel. But if you decide that your critics, that there is something, then you should change. And I give you an example from the early days of Amazon of one where we refused to change. We were small enough that most people didn't pay much attention to us or care about us. I'm taking you way back to like 1995, 1996. We pioneered this thing called customer reviews. And I got a letter one day from a publisher, a book publisher, that said, hey, you must not understand your business. You're losing sales because you're allowing negative customer reviews on the book detail pages. Why don't you just put positive reviews? And I thought about this, and I thought, no, he's wrong. We don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help people make purchase decisions. It was a different framing. And so, getting to today's news, we listened to our critics, and we decided the framing that we have been using all these years is competitive compensation. We look at what other job opportunities there are and what the competitive compensation levels are, and we offer competitive compensation and actually non-competitive, world-leading benefits packages, but just competitive compensation. And so in light of this, thinking about this and trying to decide, do we want to change, we realized, we just made a decision, well, you can offer competitive compensation or you can decide to lead. And as soon as we framed it that way, we're like, let's decide to lead.
It's a great
and I think people will follow.
And what was it the critics said that caught your eye?
Basically, they were saying, if you read between the lines, because a lot of the specific criticism was not correct, but if you read between the lines, what they really wanted us to do, they said, because you could also say, look, there's so many companies. There are all the fast food companies, there's, the baristas, and there's, like, wait a second, why are you focusing on us? But what they're really saying is, we're focusing on you because you're a leader, and we want you to lead. That's what they're actually saying. And as soon as you recognize it that way, instead of it feeling like criticism, it feels empowering. They're asking us to lead because we're a symbol of an innovative, iconic company. We're a gold standard for innovation. We should lead. There are a lot of things that are a waste of time. When you think about your life, I often tell people that I work with, if you can get, because people have very high standards for how they want their work life to be. And I said, look, if you can get your work life to be where you enjoy half of it, that is amazing, because very few people ever achieve that. Because the truth is, everything comes with overhead. That's reality. Everything comes with pieces that you don't like. You could be a Supreme Court justice, and there's still going to be pieces of your job you don't like. You can be a university professor, and still going to be, you have to go to committee meetings, and you have to do every job comes with pieces you don't like. And we need to say, that's part of it. And not resent those pieces, or try not to, but also try to minimize them. I tell senior executives, you should have the least stress. There's this weird, I think, false idea that CEOs, I'm a CEO, there's this false idea that CEOs are under the most stress. Well, I look at that, I'm like, why? You're in charge. Why don't you delegate the stress? It's your choice. And so you have to figure out how to set up your life in such a way that you can minimize the things. And I find people don't dislike hard work. What people dislike is being out of control. Like, they can't control their life. They can't control their environment. This happens to me when I get overscheduled. I hate being overscheduled. I want some time to be able to think and free myself. We all have the same amount of time in the world. Nobody has more time than anybody else. And when you become a very successful person, one of the things, you start to get overscheduled. You have this event. You had to agree to do this. And maybe last night you were like, why did I agree to do this? I have to go on stage tomorrow. I wish I were really with my family. And, or I hope maybe not this case. Let's say that you like this one. But in general, that kind of thing happens. And so you have to guard your time and try to stay a little bit flexible. So that's, for me, it's not a waste of time, but I like to have some freedom of movement rather than having every minute of every day scheduled.
And so then on sleep, I get 8 hours of sleep. I prioritize it, unless I'm traveling in different time zones. Sometimes it's impossible, but I am very focused on it. And for me, I need 8 hours of sleep. I think better. I have more energy. My mood is better. All these things. And think about it. As a senior executive, what do you really get paid to do? As a senior executive, you get paid to make a small number of high-quality decisions. Your job is not to make thousands of decisions every day. So let's say that I slept 6 hours a day, or let's go really crazy and say I slept 4 hours a day. So now I just got 4 so-called productive hours back. So if I was going to, have, say, 12 hours of productive time during any waking day, now all of a sudden I have 12 plus 4, I have 16 productive hours. So I have 33% more time to make decisions. So if I was going to make, 100 decisions, now I can make 133 decisions. If I did that arithmetic wrong, I'm sorry. And so you make 133 decisions. Is that really worth it if the quality of those decisions might be lower because you're tired or grouchy or any number of things? Now, it's different if it's a startup company. I mean, you're really, when Amazon was 100 people, it was a different story. But Amazon's not a startup company, and all of our senior executives operate the same way I do. They work in the future, they live in the future. None of the people who report to me should really be focused on the current quarter. I always tell people, sometimes I get, we'll have a good quarterly conference call or something, and Wall Street will like our quarterly results, and people will stop me and say, congratulations on your quarter, and I say, thank you. But what I'm really thinking is, that quarter was baked 3 years ago. Right now, I'm working on a quarter that's going to reveal itself in 2021 sometime. And that's what you need to be doing. You need to be out sort of, 2 or 3 years in advance. And and then why do I need to make 100 decisions a day? If I make like 3 good decisions a day, that's enough. And they should just be as high quality as I can make them. Warren Buffett says he's good if he makes 3 good decisions a year.
You don't choose your passions choose you. And I fell in love with space and rockets when I was a 5-year-old boy and watched Neil Armstrong step onto the surface of the moon. Mm-hmm. And I have been passionate about it ever since. And, there's a very real sense in which Amazon, which is an amazing, fun, interesting company to have started and lead, is, a lottery winning for me. And so I'm taking those lottery winnings and investing them in Blue Origin. And I've been working on that for 15 years. Our motto is Gradatum Ferociter, which means step by step ferociously. I like to do these things very incrementally. We have there's a military phrase that I especially love, and it says, "Slow is smooth and smooth is fast." And I have seen that in every endeavor I've ever been in. That's the kind of thing that really allows you to make progress. If you do everything in the right sequence, never skip any steps. And so we have been working in that vein for a long time, and stuff is coming out the pipeline, and I can tell you it's incredibly gratifying. We have now more than 1,000-person team at Blue Origin, and that team is incredibly talented, and they're doing a great job. My vision for Blue Origin, the long-term vision, is millions of people living and working in space. We need a spacefaring civilization for a whole bunch of reasons, and that's the vision.
I believe that the primary success factor for Amazon.com has been an obsession over the customer and a focus on customer service. This is clearly important in any business, but especially important online. And the reason for this is that word of mouth is incredibly powerful online. If you make a customer unhappy on the internet, they won't tell 5 friends. They will tell 5,000 friends on Usenet news groups and listservs and so on. Likewise, of course, if you can make a customer happy by meeting or exceeding their expectations, they can also tell 5,000 people.
and therefore, be evangelists for you. They can use the internet as a megaphone. So it's very important to do the things that you actually are going to claim to do. And what this means basically is the balance of power has shifted away from the merchant and toward the consumer, which is a great thing, I think, for everybody involved. It's even great for the merchant as long as the merchant realizes it.
I was in all the senior people at Amazon do 2 days of customer service training every other year. And several years ago now, I was in one of those customer service training sessions, and I was taking calls from customers. I had an experienced customer service agent with me, listening in, helping me figure out how to use the tools, keeping me out of trouble, making sure that I did a good job for the customer. And the customer, this particular call that I got, the customer, as soon as we pulled up her order, the experienced customer service agent leaned over to me and whispered in my ear and said she's going to want to return that table. She had purchased a piece of furniture, a table, so I'm talking to the customer to the customer, and the customer says, "I need to return this table," and it turned out that the top of the table was scratched. It was packaged poorly. And then, so we finished up and we handled the return and got all that done. And I said to the agent, "How did you know that the customer was going to return that table?" She said, "Oh, that table always gets returned." And so, what does that mean? That means that, it's an anecdote, but if you systematize that and kind of pull back, it means that there's no communication flowing from these people who are talking to the customers every day back to our fulfillment centers where the actual shipping and packaging is going on. And it's very difficult to get that communication to happen. It can't just happen easily. So we built a kind of, inspired by the idea of an end-on cord, where any customer service agent can pull a product off of the Amazon website if they think that there's a problem. And then, of course, having pulled that product off, that sets in place a whole series of processes that go back, but we're not going to ship the same table to the same customer over and over. Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this. I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where, at the sort of peak of the sort of internet, mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were, very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to, do something in the internet, because it's, it was almost like the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that, at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you've minimized the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions. It works for family decisions. Do you want? I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up. And so I don't want to be 80 and think, shoot, I missed that whole thing, and I don't have the kind of relationship with my son that I wished I had, and so on and so on.
One of the great paradoxes of inventing at a high level is that you need to be an expert in your domain area, and you need to have a beginner's mind. You absolutely need both of those things. The world is too complex to actually just be a beginner. So,
I can't, no matter how inventive I am, I can't go invent a new kind of brain surgery. You have to be a neurosurgeon. You have to already know all there is to know about brain surgery and then take it to the next level. The problem is, for many people, by the time they become true experts, they've lost that ability to see things in a fresh way. They've lost the beginner's mind. And so that's another thing. You always need to be stepping back and saying, if I'm an expert in launch vehicles or whatever it is, I need to step back and say, okay, if I were looking at this for the first time, what would I be seeing and noticing? These are just some of the things you need to do to be innovative.